how that happens. I can always trim it. All right, looks like we are live. Um, we're gonna welcome everybody who's gonna watch this session in a late night. We have a very first guest of the show who is Ted here, and hopefully you guys could hear as well as see us talking. Otherwise, we're gonna just talk into the void. So, if anyone can confirm whether you guys could hear me or not, it would be great. Um, and today's topic, we're gonna just kind of free roam on this one. So we want to introduce who Ted is, as well as talking about hardwares and architecture and maybe some rendering stuff. We've got a guest shouting out already. So TN3D Studio, you have mentioned. So that's awesome. If you can confirm whether you can hear us well, that would be awesome. And we've got a few other topics that we may or may not talk about. So we're just gonna roll with, we want to get to know about our guest, the very first guest, Ted. Why don't you take it away and just kind of give us who you are and what you do. Introduce yourself a little bit, please. Oh, we said sorry. We cannot hear you, so we're gonna let me see if I can do this. I'm sorry about that. Thanks for letting us know. Um, Last time I was able to do this. Okay. No, I can hear you just fine. My OBS is supposed to pick it up. Why don't I stop streaming and then I'm gonna redo this very quickly. Hopefully, okay, start streaming. I think that would, okay. Okay, we're back on streaming, I think. So, can you tell me your name, please?
All right, I'm Ted Vitale. Can everybody hear me?
I think people could twirl around the thumb a little bit. See if fingers crossed.
I heard myself in my YouTube end, so I think
Okay.
we're working. We're up and running again.
All right. Sorry for that technical trouble.
False start.
Yeah. Go ahead and go ahead and do the
It's good.
whole.
It gives me practice. It gave me a little warm up. So yeah, again, Joseph, thank you for having me on to have this chat. And number one, thank you. Number two, I apologize to anybody if I have trouble speaking tonight. I'm running on like 2 hours of sleep. And yeah, hopefully we will get through this without any slurred words or forgotten things. But yeah, I'm Ted Vitale. I've been doing ArcViz for the better part of a decade now. That makes me feel old. Um, I can trace my ArcViz heritage back to 3ds Max and Metal Ray in the early days, and have slowly evolved what I do and how I do it over the past few years. And um, I now own a small ArcViz studio out of Baltimore called Voxel Vision. We primarily focus on high-end luxury homes and commercial real estate. So that's a short little blurb about me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to go back and well, I guess I did want to talk about just rendering software in general because that had been my hot topic, at least for the last session that I had. Since you participate largely in ArcViz community, what's sort of your choice and your kind of vision about the current rendering software and perhaps even the modeling software as well?
Well, so one of the things that I really like about right now, specifically this point in time, is the sheer volume of rendering software out there, rendering and modeling software, and the accessibility to it. So I started off in 2004 with SketchUp 5, maybe. I think that's where it was. It was just before transition to Google. I was learning SketchUp. I was learning a little bit of Blender. I was sludging through 3ds Max at the time. I was trying to pick up whatever it was that we had at school. We were learning Revit at the time. So there were a lot of applications that had either um, architecture design element to them or VFX element to them, but nowhere where there's that kind of crossover that you could do rendering or you could do architecture. Those are the two options at the time, really. And there were some renderers out there. I think there was like Artlantis was starting to come out, and
Oh
we
yeah, that's
had
right. That was a thing.
yeah, yeah. We had Kirky Thea. I
Kirky
don't know if you
Thea, the
know of that
Thea
one.
render. Yep, yep, yep. That
No, not Thea Render.
no,
I don't
it's a
know if
different
Kirky
thing.
Thea. I don't know if Kirky Thea evolved into Thea Render, but it was an open source rendering project, ray tracing software that was arguably pretty terrible. Looking back, it was terrible, but it was a great program for the time.
I had that
Um,
choice between Kirky Thea and V-Ray, and I was like, V-Ray was a bit more mainstream, therefore I just went that way. Is
Smart move. Smart move. Um, so yeah, but there were all of these pieces of software. None of them talked to each other. You couldn't go from SketchUp to Blender to Max to Maya to whatever you're using. It was just like everything was closed up, and if you did want to go between software, it was painful. So I look at what we've got happening today, and I am, you've got Unreal Engine, which is free and accessible to everyone. You've got Twinmotion, which, depending on when you got Twinmotion, it's free.
Mhm.
You've got a very affordable version of Enscape at, I think it's like $60 a month right now. Um, and you can turn it on and off. You've got Blender, which is completely open source and free, and that is a huge piece of software. It feels a little daunting, but it is a really strong piece of software, and I'm an advocate for it 100%. So you've got all these tools at your fingertips, and then you've got your quote unquote professional tools like Revit, 3ds Max. Modo is a great tool. That's actually fairly affordable compared to Max and uh, uh, Revit. I just looked at Revit's pricing model today. Oh God. Oh, I use Revit for about 5 minutes a month to convert assets from the architect to SketchUp because we primarily use SketchUp as a go-between for everything. And it's just like I've got to pay how much for this for the year
I
to use it
wonder,
and convert files? This
have
is
you
painful.
considered Revit LT? I don't know if LT
It
exports as an,
doesn't provide plugin support.
but are you using any plugin to? Okay.
We've we've gone through this. You and I have talked about this in the past. I use a program called Revit to SketchUp because it's a one-way street for us. We're not doing cyclical design where we're in Revit and then we're in SketchUp and then we're in Revit. So we don't do that necessarily. So we go from Revit to SketchUp and we don't go back. um, which is fine. But that one plugin saves me many hours worth of organizing, uh, kind of meticulously going through models and picking out what I need and what I don't. I just dump it all into SketchUp and delete it there. And it takes maybe 5 minutes, but yeah, it's painful. Oh, it's so expensive.
It is.
Um, but with that said, some of the other rendering applications, you've got V-Ray out with V-Ray 5 and their Vision Viewer tool. Enscape is like our go-to in the studio right now, um, which I know I'm gonna get flack from any like purists out there. Any ArcViz purists are like, "What? Enscape? No, you use Max and Corona or Max and V-Ray. How dare you?"
Mm-hmm.
Um, but turnaround times, man, we can cut them in half so fast. And then you've got a lot of other plugins that just make things really easy. Um, you know, Lumion, if you can afford it. Another
Again,
one that
another.
does, it balloons the cost, but at least you own the software and you're not paying a yearly, SaaS model. For those of you who don't know, SaaS is software as a service, and it's not my favorite thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it
yeah.
has its pros and cons for sure.
So, like,
Um,
I do want to touch on Lumion. I talked about SketchUp, Revit, Lumion, V-Ray, Enscape on this Tuesday talk. One of the biggest benefit that I find, if you can cough up a large amount of subscription for Lumion, is the fact that it takes multiple different type of format quite easily without any sort of conversion, and not even like import export. It's like it can be like a collection of different assets from different file format, is what I kind
yeah,
of have seen. Is that your experience as well?
it's my experience as well. I mean, that's how I feel about 3ds Max. Max is a great go between tool where you can pull anything into that software and spit anything out of it. Lumion's similar where you can pull anything into it. I take issue with some of the ways that they control how you pull things into it. Their double-sided face thing is just terrible with any FBX files. You have to go through a second program, otherwise you lose backside faces. It's just like, ugh. Um, and there are other YouTubers out there who have heard me complain about this in the past on their channels when they show how to do something. I'm like, but it's a $3,500 program. Why does it just do that? So, yeah, it's just kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, we use Lumion in the studio for anything animated that is bigger than like a residential. If we need people, cars, trees, things that are moving, we'll use Lumion. And we kind of tier it out for our clients periodically, where if you just want like simplistic, detailed fly through, like really pretty shots, but you're not looking for animated characters or anything like that, traffic flow patterns or things like that. We usually do our base level rendering, which is out of Enscape because it's fast, it's easy, it looks great.
Mm-hmm.
If you want people moving, cars moving, if you've got like a street scene that you need done, that moves us into Lumion, and we use Lumion primarily, and we'll do some custom stuff in Lumion that we pull in some animated FBX files from 3ds Max.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah, because that's one of the nice supported features in Lumion that I hope Enscape gets. And then finally, if they really want something super creative, like really high end, we do some product rendering stuff that is really cool that I wish I could show. Um, that is all done in 3ds Max with particle flow and some really interesting particle physics rendering stuff. So
I
um,
I got so many questions. So, Well, for the Lumion part, like I find like landscape, as you said, like the city landscape, urban design. There's nothing else that really matches the amount of complexity and the detail that you can go through. When it's really up close, they're a bit more in limitation that I personally find, but I've seen such a huge success when it comes to like a overall landscape design as well as like a city planning. I've seen some folks just really excelling with Lumion, so I just wanted to kind of comment on that. And also, do feel free to show if you have any examples that you want to show. People will be able to see, and
Yeah.
we will be excited to see.
Yeah, so I mean, with Lumion, with the city scenes, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. Um, we've got some really specific use cases for these large aerials that we've done in the past where we were using V-Ray. We switched over to Lumion, and the client didn't like either because they wanted so much detail out of them. Um, but both, there's certain limitations to applications, like they were just running out of memory because these project files were so big,
Yeah, yeah,
which happens. It's just part of the gig. But yeah, Lumion with city scenes, things like that, they are really, they make it easy to populate.
absolutely,
Um, but one thing that I don't love about that is scenes all start to look the same. Until you hit a certain point, you can pretty much pinpoint that's a Lumion rendering because certain assets give it away immediately, certain character movements give it away immediately. There are things that it doesn't do it does really well, so everybody does it is what I'm trying to say. So consistency in assets across all renderings kind of it, it it makes it very obvious that the rendering is in one software or another. Now, it doesn't matter to the client. This is more a technicality on our end, the guys who are doing it. It's like, oh,
because
that's a
they're
Lumion
not
rendering.
saying you
I
have
know
to
it.
use this software to do this
Yeah,
test. They're not
exactly.
assigning you. Okay,
They
yeah.
don't care what you do it in. You could do it in MS Paint if you really want to, as long as it comes out looking photoreal at the end. They're fine. And that's the other kind of misconception. Everybody thinks the client wants photoreal. Everybody thinks the client wants photoreal. The client doesn't want photoreal. I mean, sometimes they do, but the client wants emotion. The client wants you to sell them on that concept. And that's one of the hardest things in my job, especially when a designer comes to me with a poorly developed project. When we do a rendering and it doesn't really sell the space because the client hasn't really developed the space the way it needed to be developed, like we can fill in the gaps only so much.
Right,
Um,
right.
so yeah, that
I struggled with that big time when I did like all the renderings on the side. You know,
hmm
I have to fill the gaps, and I this is actually design work. I'm literally doing design for you, and I just
Yep.
charge for rendering seems a little bit bonkers to me. Yeah, that's definitely a struggle. And at the end of the day, you know, my client's satisfied because they like my design,
Yep.
basically.
And so this is part of the reason. So we'll get into a little bit of business stuff too, and that's kind of what I want to talk about more than the rendering stuff, because the technical aspect of rendering, everybody learns that pretty easy. It's the business side of rendering that I don't think a lot of people understand. I mean, I don't claim to be some kind of evangelist. I know everything. I absolutely don't. I'm winging it 90% of the time, man. I'm doing the best I can with the tools I got in the time frame they gave me. And that's all of it. It's about making your client feel comfortable with you, making your client feel comfortable with the process, and providing a repeatable, consistent result at the end. If your renderings look different every single time, um, maybe that's your style, but the client's not going to go for that. They want consistency. They want to sell their project before it's built, or get, investment into the project before it's, off the ground, and they want to see results quickly. So by focusing on, whether it's photo real or not, you're missing the point. The point is to sell the property. So if selling the property means, being a little bit more glowy in the lighting, be a little more glowy. Make that thing sing, man. Make it
Yeah.
look pretty. Don't always listen to the interior designer. That's the other thing that I've learned. Um, it's okay to push back a little bit here and there when the interior designer wants their vision, but the client wants their vision. You are allowed to say, this is how I think it should be, to the client, and say, this is how I think it should be. I default to you to make the decision whether you want what the designer wants or what you want. And give them that choice, because sometimes they will realize that, you know, maybe the purple pillow that the designer absolutely has to have on that couch isn't the important part, and it isn't worth, the cost of a re-render.
Do you
So,
usually have client contact as well whilst you're running the project?
so this is something that I've learned over the course of the last few years doing this, is I try my best to work with developers versus architects. Um, Nothing wrong with architects and interior designers, but I find that working with the developer tends to yield different results. When you're working with a designer, you are trying to make their vision come true. When you're working with a developer, you're trying to get that project sold as fast as possible,
As
because time
expensive
is
and
money. Yep. How do I make this thing look real enough that I can sell it to a client, a potential client, before it's built? Whereas the architect doesn't really care about the sales side of things. They want that design to be exactly what they think it should be. So there's that balance between the two. And I have to kind of, I have to stand in the middle of that seesaw and try and keep everybody balanced, because I don't want to force the client to pay more because the designer has something that he wants to change. But I also don't want the designer to feel like I'm ignoring that person and their vision, because that's important too. That's what the developer, signed them on for. I like their style. I want them to do it. But you have to find that balance between the two, and that's really difficult for a lot of artists to make that understanding that, you know it's you're just spinning plates. Try and keep everything up, try and keep everybody happy. You're going to make somebody angry at some point, and it's going to happen. But you just have to understand that the end goal is to satisfy the client, whoever that is. So if it's the designer, if it's the architect, then that's your goal. Satisfy them. Make sure you got that purple pillow. But also, if the developer comes in and says, I don't care about the purple pillow, just get me the rendering tomorrow, I need to get it up on the website, you got to make, certain decisions there. So, yeah,
right,
it's
right.
it's an interesting process. And I really enjoy working with certain architects, certain interior designers who really, A, understand the process, and B, have a good, strong vision. The struggle is when the architect is like, here's a space, fill it with stuff. I don't care.
Hmm.
Because then you fill it with stuff and they're like, oh, I care now.
Is it more helpful for them to actually know the software and all the little bit of rendering side of it, or is it not helpful? They just talk too much.
It depends. Sometimes you can um, get somebody who just wants to push pixels. And there's a derogatory term for that I won't say on air here tonight. But if you start messing with pixels too much, there's a term for that, and you get to a point where they know too much. and because they know too much, it hurts the process. Because then they're like, they, they become sort of that, well, I could do this myself, but I'm hiring you to do it for me, so do what I tell you.
Mm,
Which is a frustrating position to be in.
absolutely.
Um, but I mean, I've not actually had an experience like that, where somebody is overtly familiar with the software and frustrated with the way you use it. I guess I've never really run across that. Most of my clients have been pretty great, to be honest. Never had to necessarily fire a client for any reason.
I didn't know
So,
that it works that way.
oh yeah, and that's the other thing. You can 100% fire a client. It happens all the time. Um, and fire a client is the wrong word. You never want to burn a bridge. You want to be professional. You want to be courteous, and you want to give the client as much leeway as possible. But there are situations where you have to step back and say, you know, Mr. or Mrs. So and so, I appreciate your business. However, it doesn't necessarily fit my business's uh, uh, it doesn't affect it doesn't specifically fit my business's use case, and we're going a different direction with what we focus on. We appreciate your time. uh, Thanks. Goodbye.
And they never come back, or they do come back, would you say?
I've had experiences where they have been, no, we totally understand. um I've never not finished a project. That's different. If you
Mm-hmm.
fail on finishing a project, that's on you.
Mm-hmm.
That's something
You
that
don't
you
get to
gotta
fire
be.
that way.
No, that's unprofessional. You finish that job, you get it done, and once the client has the work in hand, if they come back to you with another project or they want to continue the relationship, that's when you have that conversation. You do not fire a client mid-job unless it's a really bad job. I've never come across that. I hope nobody else comes across that. But you will find people who try and take advantage if you're green. You will find that, um, you know, where they will try and get multiple iterations um, out of your renderings. Where I want to see this, I want to see that, I want to see this, I want to see that. So go into all these things having a pretty clear document that says, I will do X amount of work within this period of time. Anything after that is considered a change order. It's just like working as an architect. And I parallel this with architects all the time who want to see revision after revision. After a certain point, it becomes a change order. And I have to tell them that and present it to them in that way and say, hey, if you guys do this to somebody in the field and they're building the building and you keep adding these change orders, it eventually causes delay and cost. It's the same thing with renderings. If you keep continuing to change the design while we're constructing that design, it's going to cause a delay
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to cause a fee change. And that's all there is to it. You account for a certain number of those corrections or changes, and then anything after that is going to be an ad service fee of a certain amount per hour, just to cover your time.
And
You don't.
do you? So it sounds like you do a sort of a flat fee, and then after certain time or certain iteration, you start charging
Yeah.
additionally. I actually personally have been favoring hourly. So, I say it's
So
estimated time.
here,
Sometimes you just don't know. Yeah.
let's see.
Yeah.
I'll,
So,
I'll share something with you. Let's see here.
mhm.
We were talking about being able to see things, and I'm very open with how I work and what I use as a proposal. And if somebody has a better option, I'm totally open to it. How do I share? Can I share my screen through Google?
Yeah.
I
If
guess.
you do, then we all be able
Window.
to see it
Okay.
theoretically.
So let's see how this works. We're gonna wing it here. Let me know if you can see it.
Yeah, we should be able to. All good.
All right. So this is kind of our standard proposal, and this changes every project. But it's who we are, your company's name, the project request, the project name, what we're doing, outline the scope of work. That's the first and foremost. Outline what the scope is, so the client and you are both clear on what it is you're going to be doing. I am rendering 10 images of your building. Two are going to be exterior hero shots, five are going to be interior lobby shots, uh, you know, uh, five, six, seven. Three are going to be interior. I have to do math, and that's not good. Three are going to be interior shots of apartment XYZ. So outline your scope of work. That's important. I always include an asset request list. This is something that clarifies what we want to get from the client.
Interesting.
Project location, models if you got them, SketchUp, Revit, Rhino, Max, whatever you got. Give me your CAD. If you've got DWG files, that's great. If they're only in PDF, that's fine too. Send me a CD set, send me a DD set, send me, an SD package. Aerial photography, site photography, anything that you've got that is valuable to what we are doing, send it to me. And then I also do like requested but not necessary. Um, Completed landscaping plans. We never get landscaping, and that's always frustrating. So we're like acting as landscapers all the time.
Oh yeah.
um, PDF, material board with specific materials. So little things like that. And then having assumptions.
Oh.
Outline a list of things that you are assuming the client will provide in a timely manner. We will, let's see, we'll provide up to 2 rounds of progress review and sign off before the 75% complete point of the project. So we offer, clear terms into when you're going to show things, what you're going to show. And this is by no means a legalese type document. I wrote this. I'm no brainiac.
By
I
the way,
probably have a
everybody,
lot of
this
holes in
is
this.
this is gold here. This is Tad. This is a Tad talk. Somebody had commented.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
this
my
is.
cousin who mentioned that.
Yeah, this is a Tad talk. This is pure gold here. Running the
Um,
business
Also,
experience.
yeah. So, outline, additional revisions after the second round are considered above and beyond and will be billed at whatever your hourly rate is. We do a flat rate of 100 an hour, just kind of default rate. And that covers my employees' time, my time taking a look at it. We should probably charge a little bit more. I think next year we'll probably up that fee. So if you're watching and you want to save a buck before, we up that fee, let
There
me
you
know.
go. You got
Um,
that.
so shameless plug.
No, no, no.
Uh,
Go ahead.
we've got all of these things, 48-hour sign-off windows, things like that. Deliverables, outline what your deliverables are. Our deliverables are generally pretty standardized. We will provide XYZ, renderings, animation, what have you. We always, always, always say that we're going to give you 3,000 pixels in the smallest direction because that usually gives you printable size of 24 by 36. And if anybody in the comments wants to clarify and I've got that wrong, let me know. But as far as I can tell, that is about the size that we can print at. Um, all of our animations we offer at HD. If you want something bigger, let us know. Setting expectations. VR and game experiences, those are going to be uh, Windows only. We
Yep.
don't do Mac for obvious reasons. They're terrible. We'll get into tech stuff later. I I'm glad there's not a lot of people because I'm sure I'm gonna start a fire somewhere.
Well,
Um,
if people watch this after we're quite late night here, so as
yep,
as the
yep.
dawn approaches on the other side of the globe,
I'm
you
looking forward to seeing the comments. We'll go over those later. But figure out a schedule. Clearly outline what your time frame is going to be. I usually do 2 to 3 weeks for 2 to 3 renderings. More if it's more, obviously. A lot of our larger jobs, because it's a rolling timeline, we don't outline a specific time frame. We just say the job's done when it's done, because we're working with your interiors team and they get us stuff as it comes to us. And then estimated fee for the project. Outline everything, what things cost, how you're going to bill. Um, Fees for the services won't exceed a certain amount without prior knowledge to the client. That way, there's no surprises at the end of the project. You don't want to surprise a client with a big fee that they didn't expect. If you charge, $2,000 a rendering, let's say, and then all of a sudden they get a job for 2 renderings and it's $6,000. Well, wait a second, where did that other 2 grand come from?
Mm-hmm,
If you don't
mm-hmm.
outline that and it's a surprise to them, even if it's not if it's changes that they made, you need to tell them about that before you slap them with the fee, because that's a great way to not get paid. So, reimbursable expenses. This is one that a lot of people don't think about. So we always say that any kind of travel is reimbursable. Um, Taxes on goods and services, anything that we need to buy that we're required to buy for a project. Let's say they've got a very specific couch model that they want. That cost me 35 bucks. I had to spend my time to go find it. I charge them 1.1 times the cost. That 10% on top covers my
Search
due
fee.
diligence. Exactly. It's just like any kind of pass-through fee as an architect. Think of it like you're you're subcontracting to an MEP team. You usually charge the client what it costs the MEP team plus 10%
Do
for
you
your
set
time
out
to
a
coordinate.
cap for it though?
I've never had to, because it's so low in my end. Like, we're talking maybe $200, so it'll be a $20 fee.
I
Whoa.
see. I see.
So, but if a client is specific enough that they want to see these certain models, you know, I don't want to be spending money out of my pocket for something the client wants if it's not something we don't already own.
Yeah, something very specific. This color,
Exactly.
shaped
Now,
sofa, that custom.
exactly. You don't want to go all willy-nilly on this and say, everything that I buy on Turbo Squid is now your problem. But, if they've got a specific chair, piece of furniture, if you have to find a 3D modeling team to model that for you or model it in-house. So let's say the client says, I've got a very specific chair that I want to see in this project. It's a 300-year-old European uh, I don't know, throne from something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not something that's going to be on Turbo Squid, so I got to model that myself. Modeling fee is $100 an hour. So if it takes us 5 hours, 6 hours, it's going to be that. If it takes us 25 hours because of how intricate it is, they need to know that. If you outsource, there's a bunch of, you know, model makers, model developers outside of the US and in the US who focus specifically on furniture. If you contracted them at a flat fee, same kind of thing. You buy that piece of furniture modeled, and then 1.1 covers your coordination costs. And yeah. And then, payment schedule, figure out how you want to get paid. We usually, this is a note to um,
Business owners.
new business owners, new biz guys. I always put this in here. Projects that exceed $10,000 will be billed according to the following schedule, and have that in there. Projects that are not billed hourly and fall below $10,000 will be billed at full at the start of a project. I don't always do this, because
Okay.
$10,000 is a lot of money,
Mm-hmm.
but it's sort of a way to weed out the people who are not serious about contracting with you from the people who are. Because if a developer comes in and sees this, 9 times out of 10, they won't even read that and be like, fine, yeah, okay, we'll pay you full up front, because they know your work is good. If you're really green and you don't have anything to show, and you're trying to get work, this isn't something that you want to do. But if you've got lots of work coming in and you want to kind of what's the term? Separate the wheat from the chaff. This is kind of the way to do it. Uh, it's an unassuming way to do it. Usually they'll come back and say, if they're serious clients, they'll usually come back and say, hey, we don't usually pay full up front. Are you okay with 50/50 or some other payment terms? Yeah, absolutely. Because they came to you and said, we'd like to split up the fee a certain way, it means they're serious about paying the full amount, but they're not comfortable with you as a new potential contractor paying a full upfront cost. So it's just sort of a I don't want to call it a sneaky way, but it's a way to weed out the people who are serious from the people who are not.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so
Or even have that budget. And,
yep,
from what I'm understanding, rather than a complete legal binding, you're trying to be upfront and expose what your kind of work style, if you may, or
yep,
some of the things that you do or what you're thinking of. You're just kind of exposing that to them so that they have better understanding of how you work, how you're thinking,
yep,
and then what you plan on doing and setting an expectation, as you said. I think it's
yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, and you never want to surprise the client. You just don't want to do that. That's mean. That's just mean. Don't do that.
No, no, don't.
Surprise, you owe me a lot of money. They already know they're going to owe you a lot of money. Don't surprise them with extras. Be 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 as transparent as possible, and I've found that that works best, especially when you're dealing with other professionals because they don't want to kind of beat around the bush. They want to know what the price is and get done with it. If you cost too much, we're not going to use you. If you cost too little, we're going to take advantage of you. But we need to know what you cost.
Right, right.
Um, and then finally, approval to proceed. I don't know if you also noticed I have initial
Uh-huh.
notes along the way for any of the important parts. The reason I do that is I try and get the client to sign all of those locations because should there be something that comes up later on down the line, hey, where's this extra fee come from? I'm like, this is the page that it says that after the third round of revisions, you start paying extra. So, it's all about CYA. You want to make sure that you're clear with the client, but you also want to cover yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So what accepted by and signed. And then finally, I always do kind of what examples are, and I really need to update this because this is pretty deprecated at this point. But what a typical work through is for what we do: model the project, get you some framed, rendered, lit scenes, get you the final image. It's kind of the default standard. Also add in kind of some other options. We do interactive
Hotspot, yeah.
walkthroughs. We do, on custom branded interactive walkthroughs. Iterative design is something that's getting more and more popular. That's where we're really using Enscape, where we're working directly one-to-one with the interior designer. And what we tend to do is sign up a client for a 3-month contract where we bill X number of hours at a discounted rate because we know we're just going to be making changes the entire time. And we work directly with the interior design team, make those changes as they come, render everything out, give them everything that renderings aren't the fee. The fee is the modeling and the development.
I see.
So
Oh, wow.
now we're not really focused on you know final finished renderings. We're focused on getting the design right. So there's that balance of what the client wants versus what the designer wants. This is one of those things where we provide really great design, um, what's the term I'm looking for? Design validation. So they design it, we make it look real. They like it, the client likes it, everybody goes home happy, and they know exactly what they're going to get. So, semi-photorealistic design iteration through Enscape is really getting more and more popular, especially with the high-end real estate market out in LA. And the great part is I can take those images and go from that to, let's see, from that to something like,
By the way,
I don't
Nicholas says you're doing great, Ted. Wide awake.
know. Keeping everybody entertained. So, but this is I can't say whose house this is,
That's
which is
fair.
frustrating.
No, it's okay.
Um, but this is the Ocean. We call it the Oceana property. This is in a very high-end neighborhood in LA. Um, I will say this is paid by Avengers money,
Ooh,
and we'll just leave it at that. You
okay.
guys can figure. You guys can guess whose house it is. But this was an iterative design project where we worked with the interiors team to get images done to show the client what the first floor, second floor, backyard, front yard was going to end up looking like. I think we
Wow.
did a really fun job. This is all Enscape, so this is live walkthroughs. We sat down with the client and the interiors team and walked them through their house and on their property before they ever stepped foot in it. Now, the great part about this is they got to really understand their space without, you know, going through the frustrations of I've built this and now I don't like it, so I have to pay for the big changes. Because let's say I don't like this kitchen layout. If I go through the cost of replacing everything, it's going to be 10,000, 20,000, $30,000 to, let's redo this section here. Because when I say this is a high-end house, that range right there is a $20,000 range. So let's keep that in mind here. Um, but yeah, so being able to have that design validation that fast is hugely beneficial to the client. So
And here's a thought. Again, we're kind of doubling back to the rendering software a
yeah,
bit, but here's sort of like, I guess, an analogy, if you may. But from, I don't know, conception of concept of a design project to finished rendering product to like the marketing um, material that you do. I feel like Enscape is so quick getting, I would say, about 70%. From 0 to 70%, Enscape is really quick. And from there, it's a very struggle to inch up towards 100% marketing material. It's good. And sometimes clients, as you said, are just completely happy with 70%. It doesn't have to be the most hyper realistic type of render. It still gets the image done. You can kind of understand what the space is doing. All atmosphere is there, so it's just so quick and
right.
efficient that we can, as a designers or someone who's providing the service, can get there really quick. But then it's where that 30% or maybe 20% that it struggles to up to. And there are other softwares that are really great at just taking that last 20%, like V-Ray,
So
Lumion.
I'm
Go
gonna
ahead.
fight you on this,
No,
and
go
this is
ahead.
good. This is good that you're talking about this. So all those images that I just showed you are directly out of Enscape. Those aren't V-Ray images. Those were directly out of Enscape. And like I said earlier, when we were talking before we started the stream, um, we have transitioned from V-Ray to Enscape mostly because speed. Um, V-Ray is the same way. I will say that Enscape and V-Ray are very much the same. Then the first 80 to 90% is fairly easy to get to. It's that last 10% that takes the artistry. And not everybody can do that last 10%. I mean, I think everybody can do it, but not everybody understands the process to do it,
Right. Which
you know?
knob to
Because
adjust, which value to
exactly,
tweak with.
exactly. Like, I can tell you that the reason I was good in V-Ray, I mean, part of it is because I'm so tied to it. Full disclosure, I was myself and a few other artists were primarily the guys who developed the V-Ray for SketchUp user interface. So I
That's how
am,
we met, by the way,
yeah,
guys.
yep. At what
Base camp,
which
it
was
might
it?
have been.
Basecamp. Yeah, it was base. It was either Basecamp or AU. I think it might have been Basecamp.
I haven't gone in AU in the
It was
States for a
Basecamp.
while, so it was base camp. Yeah.
No, I met Min um at AU.
Okay.
Architecture Inspirations.
Yep.
So, anyways, I digress. So I'm intimately tied to V-Ray for SketchUp. I love that program and I love what they've done with it. There are limitations to any program inside of SketchUp. SketchUp is a clunky, awkward, arguably terrible program to develop for.
You heard it from Ted, not me.
It is painful, not because it's not a good piece of software, because this is a great piece of software, but because it's got a lot of history, just like any piece of software, and because of the way it was developed, it's clunky on the back end. Um, and we ran into a lot of hurdles trying to develop the user interface for V-Ray for SketchUp. You know,
Hacky
those
ways.
flyout panels, they were hacky at first. They're still pretty hacky. That's all done in, well, I'm not going to get into technical stuff about JSON and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm intimately familiar with V-Ray's tool panels and um, functionality. And the reason it is as dense as it is because V-Ray is a VFX program. They never anticipated architects using it. So when you have to calculate the IOR of glass for a volume, they're really specific about how they do that and they do it right. And that's why you have to have a physical volume in SketchUp to calculate glass right in V-Ray. And I remember the biggest issue
The
with new
thickness.
users is having glass thickness. They're like, why does my glass look bad? Because it's not extruded. It's just a plane and V-Ray doesn't know what to do with that.
One-sided and double-sided, yeah.
Yep. My glass is not transparent. I don't know what to do. You've got a painted backside face. Go unpaint that
How
or
come
paint the
the edges
glass.
don't show up on my curtain wall?
Oh, God. Ah, the number of tickets that I answered, support tickets. I was on support for a long time.
Oh,
Man. Anyways, so, that last 10%, the last 20% is so important and so key to getting a really beautiful rendering. Doesn't matter if you're using SketchUp, Lumion, Twinmotion, um, Enscape, Kirky Thea. You know,
yay! Another one.
if you don't know your software, if you don't know the process to get over that like last hurdle, you're going to be a little bit disappointed with the results.
But do
You
you
know,
do you think, because this is my personal experience, Lumion is a bit hard at the first start. Like once you put a bunch of stuff in and you have arranged in the way you want it, it's so quick to go all the way to 100%, I feel, or
right.
at least in my experience. But it's just the
Right.
first 30% that's actually difficult.
Yeah, but again, that comes back to my comment about you can always tell like a Lumion rendering.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because
Unless you're
all the
doing it really
100% is the
well.
same.
Well, that I would argue that Lumion, the reason everybody gets to produce something really nice out of Lumion is they've done a really good at producing something really nice consistently. But I would say the guys who can really do Lumion well, push it to that over 10%. I think there's a company called 10 over. I'm gonna do a Google real quick. Bear with me.
That's fine. I'm gonna read some comments. We've got Ariel that is saying Inkscape is the way to go. Um,
I agree.
and uh, TN3D has been with us all along.
Tony, you're the man.
His name is Tony.
Tony,
Nice to meet you,
Tony and
Tony.
I, Tony and I go back to the V-Ray forum days. I think he was an early beta tester too, for V-Ray 3, and he might be able to answer in the comments if that's the case. I kind of forget after a while how I know people. Uh,
we
but
might have
yeah,
across the cross the street or bridge or whatever maybe.
Um,
Because I was in the early beta for V-Ray 3
yep.
as well.
By the way, if anybody is listening who is in that early beta, I apologize for how terrible all that was. I was learning as I was going, so yeah.
It's okay.
Um,
I was learning as well.
so 10 Over Media, these guys are amazing. I can't say enough good things about them. A friend of mine knows them personally, works with them. They are primarily working in Lumion.
Oh,
They're in San Luis Obispo, where my wife grew up, actually. And they do some of the most beautiful resort renderings I've ever seen, like out of Lumion. And I'm just gonna pull, like, this is all Lumion. It's beautifully done. I can tell it's Lumion because of the trees, not because of the quality of the work. And notice how they're splicing in like real images of stuff. That's one of the great ways like a good team knows how
trick.
to do things. Splice in realistic or actually real renderings into
You mean
videos
real
that
photos?
yeah, like stock footage of a thing. That's really it does like it does a really good job. So they primarily do Lumion, and they're really nice guys too. So, um, yeah, I can't say enough good things about them. They run a really high they they set a really high bar for Lumion users. So if you're a Lumion user out there and you want to see what like the primo is, go check them out. That's where you want to be. That's where you want to live. If you want to do Lumion renderings, that's where you want to live. So,
Beautiful stuff. We got a question from Sophie. I believe Sophie tuned in last week as well. Her question is, which alternative program would you recommend for modeling a diehard SketchUp fan? Asking for a friend.
right now my go-to outside of SketchUp is probably Blender. Blender has made some really big strides in the way they approach modeling.
Is
Uh,
this in the recent years, or you're just saying
I'm
Blender in
talking about
general?
like within the last year. Like they came out maybe a year and a half ago. Um, they came out with Blender 2.8. So there's a split between Blender 2.7 and Blender 2.8. Blender 2.7 was the old way of doing things. Blender 2.8 is the new way. Blender 2.8 is so much more user friendly and industry um, industry specific. Like they changed the way that you model things in Blender 2.8, and it's just getting faster. It's getting more efficient. They just released a Cycles update. So for those of you who are V-Ray users, Cycles is kind of an open source parallel to V-Ray. It is a ray tracing rendering system that
Oh wow.
um, is inside of Blender. It is really powerful if you know how to use it. I don't know how to use it. I can get some mediocre results out of it, but I'm no Blender guru. Um, if you want to learn, go to blenderguru.com or Blender Guru's YouTube page. Um, but yeah, it is an incredibly powerful modeling, sculpting, UV mapping, just all around 3D tool. Now, so my business partner, Austin Pepple, he is our lead technical artist. He is the guy who does anything that I definitely can't do: technical modeling, particle physics, C++ programming inside of Unreal Engine, and blueprinting. All that really hard stuff that I'm like, I'm never going to do that.
Me
There's
neither.
no way. Um, all that stuff he does.
So he's
I,
the
I
guy.
haven't, he's the guy. He's the guy. I haven't gotten him to use Blender. He's still a Max guy. It's just fine.
Hmm.
But um, as we come to terms with the cost of Max, I think I'll be able to convince him. If we don't transition to Blender, we'll definitely transition to Modo. So, but yeah, to answer Sophie's question, sorry, I kind of got off on a tangent there. Sophie, definitely check out Blender. Go through Blender Guru's what is it? The donut tutorial. It'll give you a good sense of how the product kind of works, where everything is, and then from there he's got a bunch of interior design modeling tutorials. I honestly don't think you should model architecture in Blender from an architect's perspective. I worked as a designer for Good Fulton and Farrell Architects in Dallas, Texas for 4 years, 3 years. If you're an architect, don't model in Blender. Don't model your buildings in Blender. Model your buildings in SketchUp and bring them in. There's some converter plugins for Blender. There's a really great piece of software that pulls in SketchUp files. But you can, using like Blender BIM, do some basic residential architecture, but if you're doing big commercial architecture, just build it in SketchUp and pull it in if you're doing that route. So, but yeah, Blender's the best other option out there, I think, right now.
If you would stop sharing the screen so that we can see ourselves, I think we're coming up to
Oh, I didn't
1 hour
realize I
mark.
was still. Did I not? I thought I stopped. Hmm,
Uh, or remove
sorry.
from meeting. If I remove from meeting, I don't know if that removes you, so I don't want
No,
to do that. No, 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 no. That's absolutely fine.
I'm so sorry. I thought I hit the stop button
No,
instead of
we've
the.
been looking at a good amount of renderings as a backdrop, so that's all great. But we're coming up to 1 hour mark, so we need to kind of have a little bit of closure. But we can go on and on and on.
Come on, man. I'm running on 2 hours of sleep. I'm hitting my second wind. I can go for at least another 2 hours.
That's awesome. Well,
No.
this would not certainly be only one that where we have you as a guest. I would love another chance to talk to you. We can go down different routes. Today we just kind of left everything as a open and see where the conversation would take the turn. And I think it still is very valuable conversation. Just us talking and having fun, as well as some gold in there apparently. It was absolutely pleasure, and it was great, and I hope to do it again. And I have some planned topics for every week, but I'm always flexible. If you got time, would always love to have you on board and talk about these great things. And if people have any questions or future topics for perhaps me or Ted or us together to cover, I would love to fill in. And having these sort of outlets to have good discussion is always fun and valuable for me. I do a little bit of rendering on the side, and the amount of the thoughts that you have put in, I would never get to, but it is very insightful, and especially for people who's planning to run a business or do plan on getting their feet wet in that business is absolutely helpful. Nicholas is saying, "How about Max running pars?" I have no idea what that
Oh,
means.
Mr. Von Staden. I don't know what pars is.
Isn't that some sort of
Um,
technical term?
Maybe.
Hmm.
So uh, Nick Von Staden is a family friend from back home. So I want to answer your question, but I'm not sure what pars is.
Parelia? Parella?
Parelia. This might. I don't know what this is.
Is that a?
R R A E.
I know what parallel is for Mac. Oh, Mac's running parallel to run Windows. Is that what?
Maybe
I don't like running parallels in Mac. Parallels.
that I.
Spelling problem. Parallels.
Well, I'm gonna assume parallels. I don't know. So yes, you can do a lot of stuff with a Mac and parallels. Um, but there are limitations on the graphics card. So the hardware that Apple runs, and we're just gonna really quickly touch on this. So for those of you designers who use Mac and Mac OS, I love okay, so parallels. We are talking about the same thing. I'm just seeing the chat pop up. So for Apple users who run Mac in Parallels, um, in the current Apple ecosystem, you are running AMD-based graphics using Metal, which is, and I'm just kind of talking about this in loose terms because I don't fully know because I'm
Opposite
not
of
a Mac user
CUDA.
anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, so um, Metal and Vulkan are two uh, GPU based, I guess,
Language.
languages,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that allow the GPU to process information. Unfortunately, because AMD and Mac are tied together, certain ray tracing software does not work on those applications. So if you're rendering, I don't recommend using Parallels or Macs in general, only because the results you will get are going to be poor or non-existent because of the hardware that Mac uses right now. I have it on good authority in the near future. You will see more real-time applications. I can't speak specifically to which real-time applications, but I will say a real-time application that you all use pretty regularly in Revit, Rhino, and SketchUp.
Are you sure you're not
Um,
spilling beans?
I'm not spilling anything. I didn't
Okay,
say
go ahead.
anything.
Okay.
Um, you know, will eventually run on Vulkan, so that you can uh, port this over to Mac applications.
It is already
Um,
running on Vulkan. It does use Vulkan engine on the back end
to a certain extent.
hmm
Well, wait,
already.
for Mac, or are you talking about the software running it?
Currently, software uses Vulkan engine a little bit, not all.
Okay, then they so I guess okay. They're
Go ahead. Go ahead.
testing some more. They're testing some more advanced features of Vulkan, I guess.
Says Ted, not me.
So, um, but we don't know what software we're talking
I
about right
have
now.
no
So,
idea. I have no
yeah.
idea.
So, anyways, that to answer your question, Nick, uh, the only reason Macs don't run a lot of these applications, whether it's in Parallels or anything else, is the hardware is so closed on certain parts or so deprecated on certain parts that a lot of the rendering software doesn't really do anything. Now, if you want to do like VFX type stuff, I think um, what's it called? Uh, Redshift does work on Mac. They just released a new program, but you're not doing architecture with Redshift. So,
This is like where I kind of try to draw the analogy. I always use car when it comes to computer. It somehow makes sense in my mind. When if if hauling loads is like rendering, then you would get a pickup truck if you want to take loads. But it's kind of like trying to fit, I don't know, the stuff that the timbers that you buy off of Home Depot into like a Toyota Prius and try to run with it. You can, but often it may not fit, or it wouldn't do as good of a job as a pickup
That's a
truck.
great analogy. That
Well,
is a
thank
really
you,
great analogy.
thank you,
I love
thank
that.
you.
I'm gonna steal that. That's mine.
Oh yeah, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Yeah, and Mac's pretty, or it's efficient,
Oh
but
man, I love the new iMac that they just released.
oh
It's
yeah,
beautiful.
M1s are
God, it's
amazing.
pretty. Well, not even the M1s, but the new iMacs and all the colors. I like.
Oh, the big IMAX stuff.
Yeah, the new ones with all the different colors. They're pretty. I like it. I want one, but I
Another
can't use it.
conversation for another day.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we have to do this again. I would love to.
Anytime,
You know,
anytime.
it may just be next week or the week after. We'll see how it goes. But I want to thank Ted for coming on, and this has been a huge fun. I love just geeking out like this and having somebody to have a conversation with. It's been lonely, 3 episodes, so so I love having somebody and having these conversation. Hopefully, other people have enjoyed too. I actually have a webinar. This was it Thursday? Gosh, I need to. Yeah, this Thursday. I should not miss that date, and I'm gonna post that link in the comment here in the chat here, and that is going to be 12 p.m. CDT. I don't exactly know what time that would be in CST, but if any of you who watch this in recording or this session, I'll look forward to seeing you there. It is an Enscape webinar, just full disclosure, Enscape and Sketchup webinar. So kind of related to things that we have been talking about on today's chat here. Hopefully we'll have Ted again. I really enjoyed. So why
And
don't
I'm
we
just
just
signing up.
why don't we just pencil down? Can we do this again next week?
Yes? Question mark. I might be in Texas, so we might be in a hotel room, but
We'll
um,
enjoy the different
yeah,
scenery every time.
yeah.
You're hopping different places,
I
so we
will,
don't
I
mind.
will, I will tentatively say yes to next Tuesday, and if things change, things change. But yeah, I'm definitely down to do this again. I'd
Oh
love
yeah.
to.
Well, you know what? If so, then we'll see you again next week. If not, then we'll see you maybe following week. So
All right, that sounds great.
well, I know it's really late on your side, so you have a good night, and everyone else, good morning, good night for everybody else, and I'll see you next time, next week, on the same time.
Great. Sounds good. Thanks for having me, Joseph. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna play outro here. They probably still hear me too.